Welcome to the Bad Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Anastasia, and today we have Sara, and she's coming on live. There she is.
Hello.
How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
This is working, and it's my first time using StreamYard, so thank you so much for your patience.
Of course.
Welcome. And I'd like to, just give a brief introduction to my guest. Sara is the podcast host of Transform to Freedom, and I've recently stumbled upon her through Rumble, and I think it was mentioned in another podcast. I'm not sure, but somehow I found you, and I'm delighted to have you on because I'm also a libertarian. And I find it really interesting, the stuff that you're talking about. I binged your videos with my little brother who's 13, and he's like really affected by what's going on in the school systems and stuff. So I spent a little bit of time before I had to bring him on the airplane with my parents on vacation. So we were just staying up till 3 a.m, and what's better than to learn and watch people's live streams and stuff. So I watched your part 1 through 3 about neo-Marxism and that whole woke agenda, and I find to be like, finally I found somebody who understands what I'm complaining about and how much it affects our kids, and they're just traumatized. So to have you on today, I have so many questions, and I like to be informal and just ask as we go and like lead with the conversation, because what's better than being real and genuine. So I'm not really prepared. I'm more just like, I'm interested to hear about you, and I want to hear like why you even started a podcast and what made you become a libertarian, and how did you even like if you wanted to touch on like your personal life, like come to like being such a powerful woman. And I don't want to sound insensitive if I call you a trans woman or a woman. What do you prefer to be called? Like, I know you said trans woman in one of your podcasts because you want to make the distinction that you weren't originally a woman, but I personally have no idea. So please educate me, and then maybe you can help people be more sensitive or insensitive or whatever, just educated in general.
Yeah.
We should speak to each other.
Yeah. So one of the things that I talk a lot about is trans women are not women. Trans women are trans women. And when we're talking on a public space, like when we're talking, having these discussions about, woke ideology and the trans and queer theory and that agenda, it's important to make that distinction in biology, because you have a different lived experience than I have, and I have a different lived experience than you have, and neither one of those are wrong. So that's why I do say trans women. Now, everyday society, it's a lot different than when we're having these conversations. I think it's important that I do it online, but I'm not correcting people, in public or anything like that. I live and blend actually pretty well every day in society as a woman. So that's really why you hear the distinction when I talk about it in my videos, because I do want people to make sure that they know that it's not okay just to put the name trans woman. Trans women are not biological females, and I think that's where a lot of this distinction gets missed. And when we're having public policy debates and all that stuff, it's important. It's an important distinction to make.
That's true. Okay. I totally understand that. And I'm glad that you're not really like triggered by, how people are referring to you. What do you do for a living?
Right now it's this. I also do political consulting. I'm working a campaign here in Georgia right now. It's actually on a Republican campaign, but that's really what I do. I own my own business, so I kind of I just got to hustle right now to get everything still moving and building my brand and building my platform.
That's amazing. And how long have you been doing it?
So I started my YouTube channel in 2000, March 2020. And yeah, I didn't think that it was anything I would ever do in my life, because I can give you my background. So I joined the Army. I'm a former military officer. I joined the Army as a logistics officer in 2010. I served for 7.5 years. I got out in 2017 and moved to Atlanta. And
served as a man.
Yes.
And then after you had your transformation. Well, thank you for your service,
Yes.
Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. But yeah, so I served as a man. I've been married. I've been divorced. Everything. The first person I ever came out to was my ex-wife. I came out to her in 2014. We separated at the end of 2015. And then that's kind of when I moved to Fort Bragg, I would travel to Atlanta, travel to some of the surrounding areas, and start to explore my gender a little bit more because there was something I needed to figure out. Again, this is 2016. I moved to Atlanta in 2017, and I was living every weekend as a woman. And basically, I was socially transitioned other than at work for a long time. Came out to my family, incredibly supportive family, and was it like July of 2018? Okay. And I began hormones in March of 2019. And so I've been on hormones for coming up actually over 3 years now. And I've been full time for about a year and a half. But yeah, so what kind of happened when I started my podcast, I had lost my job in November, was looking for something to do, and realized, right after I lost my job, that's when I basically was like, okay, this is when I can go full time. I changed my name, everything. And so I started realizing that there needed to be more trans voices out there speaking rational thoughts and not pushing what leftists push. And I've always been a libertarian. I was a constitutionalist. I was a Tea Party conservative, moved to more of a constitutionalist, and then I got active in liberty movement in about 2017, 2018 when I got out of the Army. So I've always kind of been in that realm, and I had made some friends on Twitter, and it was March, and I was watching a Blair White video. It was actually on her second channel where she talked about meeting Caitlyn Jenner for the first time, and Caitlyn told her to do what scares you. And to me, that made a lot of sense. I could give a public speech and be in front of 1,000 soldiers and brief a plan and do all that stuff, but I hated being in front of a camera. And so I started thinking about, should I do this? Should I start, doing videos, everything like that? And then it just so happened, like 2 weeks later, Ariel Scarcella, who is a friend of mine, asked me if I would shoot a spot for one of her videos. And I said, yeah. And I just asked her, I said, hey, should I start a YouTube channel? And she said, absolutely. And so I started a channel like within the next week.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I didn't see a lot of growth until September, maybe, of last year. I think I had 300 followers in September of last year. And then me and Ariel actually did a reaction video together when we were in Nashville to the trans MMA fighter. And that video hit 60,000 views, and my channel just skyrocketed. And then my Dave Chappelle video, I did a reaction video to his comedy special, and that video hit, I think it's at 190,000 now. So those two videos just they put me out there and just boosted my channel completely. So and now my stuff's getting looked at on Rumble quite a bit. Rumble's actually almost as big as YouTube for me now, because my last 3 videos have been put on the front page, so I've been getting 10 to 15,000 views on those videos each, and so I'm almost at the same point as I am on YouTube.
That's
on
awesome.
Rumble.
Well, good for you, Sarah. That's
Thank you.
Well, it looks like everything's aligning for you, and you're just you look great too. Your
Thank
skin
you.
is great, your nails, like that's great that you're a full-time entrepreneur and you have your own business. That's something we have in common. I was going to ask you, what was the hardest thing for you? I know your family was supportive, but like, what was the hardest thing for you? Were you worried about what your family was going to do or say, yeah, you were worried about that
Yeah.
the whole time?
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, it was interesting because this is a secret I've kept my entire life. I knew something was different my entire life. And so it's always worrisome and how your family is going to react. Even though they had always told me my whole life that they would say, if you were gay, we wouldn't care. We just love you either way. So they always told us if we came out or anything like that, they would be accepting. And even still, it was still difficult. I got lucky when I came out because I kind of was given an out. I didn't have to really come out to people. They found out.
Okay.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, I went to Nashville Pride with a friend of mine, and she posted a picture on Facebook, and somehow my dad saw it, took a picture of it, and just reached out to me and was like, so this is on Facebook. Is there anything you want to tell me? And I was just kind of like, the picture speaks for itself. And then I took a
You were still a man?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and I mean, the picture was taken like a month before that. And yeah, so I basically took a screenshot of that and just sent it to the rest of my family and was like, hey, so this is out there. I just want you to know it for me first. And honestly, it was one of the biggest like weights lifted off my shoulder. Like I said, I had gender dysphoria as long as I can remember, probably since I was 4 years old. I mean, I remember trying to dress on when I was 4 years old and realizing there something wasn't right about that, and that I was different than everybody else. And then puberty was completely a confusing time, being interested in women, but wanting to be a woman and like wanting to experience the same things that they are, but at the same time hiding this fact that I might be interested in men too. So it's like it was just this really weird and interesting time.
Do you have anybody in your family that has come out and that, maybe how did you look up to anyone as you were growing up and feeling, like you were different? Did you look up to anybody besides, you mentioned Caitlyn Jenner, and honestly, I think she's great. And because she's so original, I feel like she's held her secret for so long too. And watching that evolve is just, I don't know. It's just really definitely more interested in her than the Kardashians.
Yeah, I have never really watched any of that stuff, but
Me neither.
not really. I mean, not really, because I mean, I grew up in the 90s, there wasn't a whole lot going on in my family. I don't think nobody in my like immediate family or aunts, uncles, cousin, or anything like that were gay, but in extended family, like family of my like uncle-in-laws, like married uncles by marriage and stuff like that. And so everybody was always accepting of all the gay people around. My mom has some people that she works with, and they were always over, and it was just this normal thing to accept, being gay. And so it wasn't anything like that. But in terms of who to look up to, no. I mean, I don't think again, it wasn't being presented in the way that it was. And yeah, looking at Caitlyn came out, and it was interesting because she's interesting anyways, because I think she toes that line of sometimes going too woke because she's in Hollywood and she was looked up to. So I admire her for stepping out and going against the woke grain, because she could have had this just like basically stay in that closet too, because she was put on she was named Woman of the Year and everything like that. And I wonder now if she would even accept that award. I think that it was just I get how it can be a whirlwind of emotions at that time. But if it was me, I mean, at this point in my life, I don't think I would accept an award like that, because it's be taking a spot away from a biological female and kind of ruins the categories.
Right. And I feel like you have a lot of love for women that are biologically women, that you admire them and you find them attractive, and obviously maybe down whatever, we don't have to get into that. I don't know, how do you see the society now, and then in terms of when you were growing up in the 90s? I feel like we're maybe the same, similar ages, maybe in our 30s. Yeah, like I know that with like my culture, being gay and all that, like it would be really, really difficult for me to come out if I was to be in your position. I wouldn't even,
Yeah.
I would probably just never speak to my family again, and they would never
Yeah.
speak to me because they wouldn't ever understand. And how do we help people like be more open-minded? Because me having you on my show, it to me is like something that I never imagined to happen. Like I never thought that I would have this conversation ever, because
Yeah.
it was just like the political turmoil right now that we're in. I feel like we have to have these conversations, and the more we have them, and thank you for being a voice for the trans community, because they need somebody that's gonna step out of the, the wokeness. And even just kids, like honestly, like you just being who you are, like I can't wait for my kids to hear about you, because I've been telling, I was like, guys, listen, I've found this woman, transgender woman, and you guys will never believe me. You guys think I'm like crazy and stuff like that, because they do. Like I speak about this stuff so passionately. Like it is our freedom to be who we are, and in this country especially, like we are so special and blessed.
Yeah.
You've even fought for those rights, with your own body and soul. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy passionate for me. I mean, I feel it. I feel like you're really like living in your power, and you're going to inspire a lot of people. And with your YouTube channel and the fact that you are doing your own thing, and you're not, trying to adapt to whatever society wants you to be. And
Yeah.
hopefully, the political parties that are getting your consulting do listen to you when they make these bills, because it can go either way at this point, because like our future are the kids. So if
Yeah.
they're being brainwashed right now, and like what's going on like Nickelodeon, like I don't know if you saw the gay
Nickelodeon, I didn't know.
parade, the gay pride parade on Blue's Clues. Did you see that?
Oh
How
yeah.
do you feel about that?
So that was, I did a reaction video about that last year when it happened, and so kind of going back to it, I think we had peak acceptance in about 2015, and I think that was where, so 2015 is when gay marriage was legalized. And I think everybody was kind of, I mean, it's 75% support the LGBT community, and then you got the people that were used to fighting needed to fight more, and that's basically what created this ideology. And now you see, you've watched my stuff on queer theory. Queer theory is a postmodernist agenda that's tied in with neo-Marxism, and that's really when that kind of took hold, and started being pushed into society in terms of activism. But yeah, so like the Blues Clues, it was really interesting because it's one thing, again, I think, to teach kids that love is love, or that you can love who you want and be who you are, and what grown adults do to that, what grown adults do is none of my concern. I don't think most people say, I don't care what, most people will say, I don't care what grown adults do. They can do whatever they want with their body, they can do this, but don't push it onto children. And the thing is having that pride parade, there was a lot of stuff that I saw issues with, and one of the main things is I even pointed out, like, I stopped the video and looked and said, because they're pushing stuff like asexual, like they're talking about being asexual or pansexual and all this other stuff. When you talk about like asexual, you're talking about the actual act, the physical act of sex, because you can be asexual and be straight, gay, bisexual, whatever. If you're asexual, it just means you don't prefer to have sex. You don't find physical sex appealing to you. And so to have something like that discussed on Blue's Clues was a major red flag, because it's like that is specifically talking to kids about sexual behaviors or lack of sexual behaviors. So I thought that's deeply troubling.
What part of the video was that?
It was just during, I don't remember what number it was, but it was one of the numbers. It's like, this number stands for ace.
I was so confused when I watched it, but I'll watch it again and then like look back at what you said. Okay.
Yeah, I would have to look back on it too, because again, this happened last June. So it's like, and it just seems like since then, everything has gotten even crazier. Like, and crazier and crazier and crazier. And it's just, it's continuing down the same path, and it's a path to destruction, but it kind of goes along with everything that's happened in the rest of society. And actually, with the emergence of TikTok, that's the biggest thing that we're seeing, is because all these people are kind of exposing themselves on TikTok. Yeah. And they're showing who they are, and then so the teachers are going on there and telling how they indoctrinate children. And then you have these kids, and TikTok's mostly is a lot of kids on there, discussing their gender. And it all just seems like this crazy, made up bullshit for woke points, like, because they want to fit in with their friends. They're sitting here doing this. And I always point it back to it just reminds me of like the goth kids when I was in school. And so I always call it like it went goth to emo to sing kid to now trans, and like that's the pipeline. That's like where we've gone. The only difference is now these kids are getting top surgery at 14 years old and permanently scarring their bodies, where they didn't used to do that. Well, maybe they did with like tattoos and stuff, but it's not the same. It's like a 14-year-old that like, you start HRT and you can't have kids, and that's a huge issue. Like, that's a decision that you should be making when you're older.
Grow in the parts of your body that you're supposed to grow. You don't develop.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's really bizarre. So what about you? Do you have kids, or I know you said you were married. No?
No, I don't have kids. And that's a story. We tried to have kids and couldn't. But yeah, I don't have kids. Possibly someday in the future. I'm not sure. If I meet somebody that wants to have kids, maybe, but not at this point. And that's the other thing. I was smart. Before I even started taking hormones, I made sure I stored some sperm, and so that I could have kids if I was in a relationship with a biological female at some point in my life. I don't know. Which is something that people don't think about. Like, all these kids are thinking, I just want to do this now. I want to do this now, and not even think about the consequences in the future and what that could be. I've had people come up to me. They were conservatives come up to me, and they're super proud of their grandchild who just got their name changed. And I tell them straight up, I'm like, I wouldn't put them on any hormones until they're 16. And I would definitely make sure that they, even if they're not planning ahead, that you have them plan ahead and store that and make sure that they can at least make that choice when they're older, if this is the wrong choice for them, and they realize at some point this was a mistake for them. Yeah, at least you have that.
When you were like in high school, did you think about like, what your future, what would you do when you grow up? Like, did you think like did you have any ideas of what you wanted to be?
Oh, no.
No.
I fell in love. I knew I wanted to be in business. I kind of always wanted to be an entrepreneur myself, but when I got to college, I went for a business degree, and I ended up getting a degree in logistics management and marketing. And so I kind of fell down that career path where I was doing logistics almost my whole career. I was a logistics officer in the Army. I was a warehouse manager when I got out of the Army. And then I don't know, just I had always dabbled in starting my own businesses, like trying to run online stores. And even when I was in college, me and my brother tried to start like a skateboard company. And so I had always wanted to do something like that. And then once I got into corporate America, I realized that, corporate America is not fun. It's not much different than the Army was, and the Army, and so there's always been this part of me that's always wanted to work for myself. But at the same time, I do. I'm looking at places right now, possibly working at some of these companies that are like more liberty-leaning companies, and they know exactly what I do in my activism, and they give me flexibility with my activism as well. And those are some of the companies that I'm starting to talk to as well.
That's good. And so, were you ever called a white supremacist? I'm just curious because a lot of libertarians get called white supremacists. So I wonder.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're anything but a far left progressive, you're getting called a white supremacist. If you're not, backing BLM or BLM Inc. As we say, because the organization is different than the mantra. But
the BLM fist was in the video.
Yes.
So
yes.
When I saw that, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it was in the microphone. It was like on the microphone of the stand. Yeah, that was one of the first things I pointed out with that. But yeah, I mean, I've been called white supremacist. I mean, I've been called so many different names. It's hilarious because I get called a turf all the time. Like I get called transphobic all the time, or a self-hating trans person, or a pick me. I could just name all the stuff that leftists call me because I'm out here speaking against their ideology. And but if that's one thing I want to point out to most people, and I always call this the 8% rule, and that's why I started doing this, because I think more of us need to speak out, is that narratives are shaped by about 8% of the population, or 8% of a certain community. So when you look at the trans, or even just the LGBT community in general, the wokeness it's only about 8% of that community. Like, maybe among younger generations, it's higher, but I think it's only about 8%. But most trans people, like actual trans people, transition, blend into society, and why would they ever want to speak up out? Why would they ever want to just take it upon themselves to speak out against what's going on, when they can just live a normal life and nobody even knows they're trans or anything like that? But I think it's important that's why I got into this too, is because I think it's important that we do, because otherwise we won't see a future for ourselves, and we will be outed. We will be, eventually they will come for you, like, and the left will come for those that are silent right now, because they're saying silence is violence now. Like, that's to get more people shamed onto their side. It's like the BLM stuff. It's like if you're not speaking, if you're not a self-hating white person to them, you're violent and you're a white supremacist, basically.
I know. That's the part. That was one of my key questions I wanted to ask you, because I swear, like, it's not even it's like being called a communist, and I'm from Russia, and it's like, well, I mean, I came here, I was 6 after communism fell, but sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that people would call you communist, but they don't realize that it is their agenda that's being pushed on the left. When you're a libertarian, it's like their agenda is tied to push communist thinking. I mean, in Marxism, the reason why Marxism need to be pushed into postmodern, like neo-Marxism, is because Marxism in and of itself is just an economic system.
Right.
Well, in order to be able to get that economic system, you have to divide people. You have to get them into groups. And so neo-Marxism creates these classifications of society, where it's usually just the elite versus the working class. But in order to be able to create the division that they need to do it, they create separate classes, like based on race, sexuality, and all this other stuff. Which you watch my queer theory videos, the queer part of the community and the LGBT don't even exist anymore. Like they don't even coexist anymore, because queer theory perpetuates this idea that there is no such thing as sexuality. And so when you erase sexuality, you basically erase what the LGBT stood for in the first place. And so I think that's why the numbers actually start to show. Like when you see, you think that this is getting worse and worse and worse, and then you see that Donald Trump went from 19% of the LGBT vote to 28% of the LGBT vote, highest by a Republican president, I think, ever, or since the 60s of the, and so when you see that he gained all those numbers, you start to realize that it's actually going into a different direction, what you think it is. The LGBT is not on board with the woke Marxism like you would think it is, based on online discourse.
Yeah.
Well, and you see this all the time. And I started looking at this. I mean, it was probably about 5 years ago. It's called the perception gap, and so I started learning about the perception gap when it came to gun violence. As a Second Amendment supporter myself, you start to see that the perception gap is that based on how many shootings and everything like that, people perceive that the crime rates are going up, like especially gun crimes are going up in this country, when at the exact same time, when you look at the statistics, we have the least amount of violent crime in this country that we've had since the 1960s. Like, so that perception, that's what's called the perception gap. The perception of reality is not what you see, it's what the stats show. And if I might add, I always kind of point out, because the highest population that's growing in gun ownership is women, gays, and minorities. And so it's kind of so the saying is that Pink Pistols have, which is the LGBT gun rights organization, is that armed gays don't get bashed. And so I kind of move that into armed women don't get raped, and so it always makes sense when you're talking about this, when you actually look at the violent crime stats.
I love that you brought that up. Thank you so much for tying that in. That's amazing. I was in the military too. I'm actually in a 92 Yankee in the military, so I was in logistics as well. I wanted to comment on that, but I didn't want to cut you off. But yeah, that's where I learned that, how to protect myself, and it was important, and that I was powerful, like in the military. So kind of like, taking on the boy, I guess, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And my mom, thought I was nuts to go in, and like, that's a man's job. And like I said, like, I just started jujitsu. I don't know if I told you, but I just started jujitsu, and it's mostly men, but it was for a reason that I didn't want to be, a victim. And that's really what my podcast is about. And what the woke agenda is pushing the victim mentality on everyone. Like, you need the government, and you need this and that, but like, they're not protecting people that are victims in real life. The court system isn't protecting them. We got so many people that are applying for gun ownership, and just because they've been in domestic violence, they can't get a weapon. And whether they were a victim or not, it doesn't matter. It's like the court will decide if they want to give you a gun, or sorry, your public police department will decide whether you get a gun or not. So I've had situations like that myself that caused a lot of issues. And it's like, how are we supposed to protect ourselves? They don't want us to. And I live in New Jersey. You live in Georgia. So your gun rights are actually existent. Our gun rights non-existent.
We just got constitutional carry. So
that's amazing. Good for you guys. One day, maybe in our
maybe. I don't know. I know a lot of people that escaped those areas already this year, just
right.
from COVID
and
and
all
stuff.
coming into Georgia and Florida and all that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that moved to Florida recently. But yeah, it is, and I'm surprised that your jiu-jitsu class would be mostly men, honestly. Even when I was in Richmond, Virginia, and I was taking jiu-jitsu, but it was self-defense. It was a self-defense like academy, but they taught, it was just jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai were the two like disciplines that they taught there. So it was like half and half because of that reason, because they were. And jiu-jitsu is probably the number one thing that they teach in terms of self-defense courses. It's really important. And then I think a lot of states, they need, I mean, everybody's done a lot of lip service when it comes to, like you said, domestic violence stuff. Like, you should be able to get a expedited firearm if you've been in domestic violence situations, on the receiving end. So it's just really messed up with the way that some places view guns, and it's really funny. Well, it's not funny, it's ironic that they want to defund the police and then take away our right to self-defense at the same time. It's like, who's going to protect you? No one, because criminals don't abide by the law, so who's gonna protect us at that point? And we're seeing a huge, I live in Atlanta, so we're seeing a huge rise in crime in Atlanta based on the defund the police movement.
And how is the defund the police movement there? Because we don't really hear much about it here in New Jersey, and we didn't really have any riots or BLM. Like, everything was peaceful here in our state. We didn't get a huge, like, we didn't have anything burned down. We barely had any vandalism. I didn't see any, at least. I know in Richmond, they vandalized monuments and all kinds of stuff, but here they haven't done anything.
Yeah, so they burned many parts of the downtown area in Atlanta. Atlanta was like the hub. If you remember CNN, they even were going into CNN and all that. But our city was standing strong. I mean, I actually gave our mayor a lot of credit early on because she was trying to calm stuff down, and I actually think she wasn't going along with a lot of the national narrative. Until I forget the man's name. It was the Wendy's man who grabbed the police officer's taser and was shot, and that caused her to flip positions and then move to be more defunding the police. And then once she started pushing that, police officers started quitting. And now, like, we have so Buckhead is like the most affluent area in the city and probably the state of Georgia. They're looking to they're trying to vote on cityhood right now, so they can, rein in this crime wave that's happening in this beautiful area, in this just really nice neighborhoods in Georgia, because they don't think that the city's actually there is going to protect them anymore. So that's the backlash that you're kind of seeing. Like, we have 3 different areas that are trying to de-annex from the city of Atlanta to say we're going to vote on our own cityhood and provide our own services.
Wow, I've never heard of that. I wouldn't have heard of it if you didn't tell me.
It's a huge thing in the city and in the political districts around here. But outside of here, I don't think many people would have really heard too much about it. A lot of people have heard of the crime waves that is happening, the spikes in crime. It's gotten a lot of attention, especially after there was a lesbian woman that was brutally attacked in Piedmont Park walking her dog, and that got national attention. And then the Asian spa stuff happened, and that got national attention. And so there's been some national attention being put on our city, and we're gonna see what happens this next election. But the city basically just voted for, so we don't have partisan, like, city council positions are not partisan, and so the mayor is technically not a Democrat, but he is a Democrat. So we just voted another Democrat mayor into the city. that's pushing the same old stuff. So that's I think what made the push for de-annexing some of these areas even stronger.
So, well, they haven't done it yet, right? They're just
No,
okay.
no. Well, so they voted. I think that they were gonna vote on it, and then they pushed the vote. Something happened. I don't know exactly how it all happened, but then they pushed the vote for the citizens to even be able to vote on it. And so we have a primary. We have a election coming up. We have the Democrat and Republican primaries in Georgia start on May 2nd. It's either May 1st or May 2nd. The primaries themselves begin. And so two of the areas, like the area I live in, we have the vote for cityhood on our ballot. Buckhead has a referendum basically voting to say, do you want to have a vote for cityhood on their primary ballots as well. So even this primary is super important to get out and vote because there's those things happening in our areas.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that information.
Yeah.
Well, what do you see yourself doing in like 5 years? The same thing? And like, do you ever see yourself running for office or anything like that? No.
No, I don't see myself running for office. I never want to be a politician. I always tell people I like consulting on campaigns. I enjoy talking to people, but I would see myself more of a public figure, kind of as I'm starting to do now, out there, speaking to people, getting the message across, making people aware, and doing more. So I am speaking at Freedom Fest in Vegas in July, which is a huge libertarian festival in Vegas, and some really big names. But so this is the first like major event that I've been speaking at, and it's like one of the biggest. But I want to be doing more of that stuff, just getting out there, doing like panel discussions, and I'm trying to get invited to more of these things to do, and trying to just push my brand and build this company.
That's definitely awesome. And I was the one, I shared that post actually. I saw that you were speaking there and like, oh my God, I'm gonna be in Vegas like the next week. So see if I could go and switch my ticket because I'm going to a convention the following week for life insurance. So that's what I do. I'm an insurance agent in my consulting company. So I think we need to get you out here into New Jersey so you could do an event here.
Yeah.
Hear you talking, and maybe, we could bridge the gap, with the blue and the red and just make it. I think.
Well, I'll tell you, I was actually having major FOMO because all my friends were in Fort Worth, Texas this past weekend for what was called Better Discourse Conference with, I think it's Myth Informed. And so they basically, that's what they did, is they had people from the left and right, and there was like a bunch of different like 4 people panels, and like all my friends were out there speaking, but I was not invited to go. So I'm like, so hopefully the next one I'll be doing those ones,
What is the panel called? What is this?
So it was, so if you look up the Better Discourse Conference, or I think it's Myth Informed is the company name. Yeah, so it was some great people there, and actually somebody that I've been trying to get on my show for a little while is James Lindsay, who is the expert on CRT and critical theory, and I want to talk to him about about queer theory and neo-Marxism and all that, because he really is the expert on it. And so we've been talking a little bit behind the scenes, but hope to get him on sometime.
Right.
But he was speaking at that conference, and I was like, oh, that would have been awesome to go.
That would be awesome if you could like speak to some teachers unions or board of vets. Have you been invited to anything like that?
None of those things. No. I can tell you that I have spoken to politicians across in a multitude of states, And I've just behind the scenes talking to some of those people though. I actually consulted on the Louisiana version of the Don't Say Gay bill. And so I'm waiting to see what changes they actually make to the bill before I actually speak more about it to, but I've already started to see them painting that bill as this, as worse than the Florida bill. And so I'm kind of excited because then I can just go to them and be like, yo, I mean,
ask my opinion.
well, I would just tell the writers, be like, yo, I wrote the bill. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Okay.
Like, you don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean I wrote it?
Did you do consulting on the Florida Don't Say Gay bill?
I did not. I just did reactions on that. I've done a couple videos on that, and I've also spoken. So Christina Pushoff actually follows me on Twitter as well. And that's Ron DeSantis's press secretary. So, yeah, she actually asked me. She said if I did any videos on it to let her know, and so I did. I was like, I already did a video on it. Here you go.
There you go. That's great. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was awesome.
It was awesome. I'm giving you a virtual hug because, maybe in the future we could talk about anything you're interested in. I'm very interested in how this is going to progress your career because this is, just a hot button. Like, this is your market right now, and this is
absolutely
for you. The more feathers you can ruffle, the better.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I ruffle a lot of feathers quite a bit. You should see, I mean, because it's funny because we talk about the left and all of this stuff, but I actually get a kick out of going and reading my Rumble comments because that's the other side of the coin that I get on my Rumble comments. I just have to sit back and laugh at those.
I love it. Well, actually, I have a couple of comments to make, just because I do have like some people that have been a little negative about, me even talking to you. And
Yeah.
I find that to be so close-minded and like so, just backwards. Like, aren't we supposed to be loving and accepting of, our neighbor and maybe not, adapting what they're doing, but at least just being like, understanding, like, okay, we're not the same, we're different, that's what makes us special. And having the conversation maybe will break up some like myths that you have in your head. And but you're open about it. There's a lot of people that aren't. So, and they judge and they don't want to talk about it because they're, so close-minded, so angry because right now it's just a hostile environment to discuss politics. So, and that's their loss, people, if they're not open to having a debate or a discussion when they don't agree or have the same values, that's their loss. And they're not gonna benefit from your perspective, and which is so unique. I feel like your perspective is like one of the most uniquest ones I've come across. So shout out to
Well,
you
thank you
for being you and living in your power and inspiring individuals. And can you tell people how they can find you or reach you besides Rumble, I think you mentioned?
Yeah. So it's actually the easiest way to find me is just go to sarahhigdon.com. And there's a section on there that has links to all of my social media platforms. But the main things that I'm usually on, I'm on Twitter a lot, and it's just Twitter and Instagram is Sara Higdon with an underscore after it, and then youtube.com/Sara Higdon, rumble.com/Sara Higdon. But I'm on just about every social media platform. Got to be everywhere.
Great. And do people like interact with you like in different ways, or do they even like, do they start shit with you? That's all I wanted to say. Do they mess with you? Like, does a woke left mess with you?
Oh yeah. I think they leave. I don't know. Maybe it's because of who I am. I don't know.
If you were called a Yeah.
Yeah, I've been called TERFs, and yeah, I mean, they do.
How do you respond to those people, and how do you like? Because I know there's a lot of people that suffer from like getting bashed for their ideals, and like you're extremely unique and you have a lot to say. What do you say to somebody that hasn't found their voice?
If you haven't, it's just, I mean, it's words online, really. That's all it is. You can't take anything that anybody says online personally, and understand that when you do step out, it's freeing, and it's one of the biggest things that you can do to help your movement. And I think that anybody who is seeing what's going on and not speaking out but wants to speak out, they should, and understand that there is a community of us, who are out there and speaking out, and we have your back. I mean, just come and talk to us, and Twitter is the best place to talk to us because you know we a lot of people, we interact. I mean, Twitter is it's one of those amazing spaces where you can actually interact with people, and there's not these barriers to interacting with people of your same community. Like, I've made a lot of good connections on Twitter, and thankfully Elon Musk bought Twitter today, so we will be experiencing so much more. But start out small. First find your community before you really start ruffling feathers. But I mean, I guess I have a brash personality too. Like, when people come after me, I either I either can, attack back, or a lot of times lately I've just been kind of, I'll just hit the mute button or not even care. I mean, I do actually, some of the people on, the left, I've been on some of their channels and stuff like that. Some of the actual YouTube people on the left, I've been on their channels, and we can actually have pretty good dialogue. But it's the trolls that that's all they are, is trolls, and most of them are anonymous trolls that are the worst, do the worst damage, because they're the ones that are not actually stepping out there and showing who that they are, because they know they can't take the heat, but they'll try to give it to you as much as possible. And like I said, I'm probably one of the most blocked people on Twitter, honestly. I have over 2,000 people block me, I think, because and most of them are like the woke leftists, because I stand up for myself and I don't back down.
That's awesome. More power to you. And thank you so much for, online bullying is just insanely affecting the young people. And hopefully, if there is a young person that listens to you, maybe they'll find their voice faster than, you and I did, because we didn't really have social media when we were younger. So amazing.
It's important that everybody, though, knows that no matter where you stand on a lot of these things, there are communities out there that you will fit in. Like, so don't be afraid to get out there and talk to people, because eventually you'll find people that you fit in with. And in everyday society, I mean, like I said, I'm working on a Republican campaign right now, and it's like, I meet Republicans and some of the conservatives all the time, and what you hear about people online is not necessarily the truth. I've never had one interaction of what I would consider transphobia, but my definition of transphobia is not the less definition of transphobia. Yes, I've had interactions where things might make me uncomfortable, but is it necessarily transphobia? I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah. Transphobic seems to be a word that my son and my daughter have used, and I've never even heard the word until like recently. So it's like these kids just come home and they just spew a bunch of stuff they learned or heard, and then you gotta like just shovel it and just put it back together. And it's truly unique that you exist, because they are now like more open to like thinking like, oh well, maybe it isn't black and white, maybe it is all the colors of the rainbow, and not in that sense, in the sense that everybody has a different opinion. And not everyone's going to speak up. Not everyone wants
Exactly.
to. So,
And I'll tell you, I don't know a single person that I agree with 100% on everything, you know, not a single person in my life. And that's what we need to remember. It's not, you know, hateful to disagree with people. And
right.
some people can't disagree with other people in a good cohesive manner, but I think it's important that we still put it out there. And usually, like when I have conversations online, it's this notion that even if I'm arguing with somebody, uh, being the calm, rational person in the room, at least it will affect. It's not the person that I'm arguing with that I'm trying to change their minds. It's everybody else that's kind of seeing the conversation, trying to trying to decide for themselves. Yeah, and if you're interested too, on my YouTube channel, I have a playlist of other videos, other people's videos that I've been on, like other interviews and stuff. They're all like in that playlist,
Okay.
and I've done quite a few interviews, but probably the biggest one was I was on Slightly Offensive on the Blaze TV last year, and it was talking about I was defending Caitlyn Jenner at being at CPAC. So it was interesting because that is another perspective on the right. But if you actually watch that interview, it's actually a calm, rational discussion among everybody there. It's not like this scream fest between people, and I think that's important as well. Is actually get to where people are at. Try to see things from different people's perspectives. Whether you walk away, maybe you know it'll change your mind a little bit, or maybe you'll change their mind a little bit. But even the comment section in there is like you at least get people to respect you when you can actually have a rational discussion, because a lot of the comments were even I don't agree with Sarah on any meaningful way, but I can respect somebody who comes in here and does not try to scream and try to force you into their agenda. They can actually just have a rational conversation, and that will do more for our movement than anything the woke left is doing.
Sure. Right. Because they're
Yeah.
just kind of pushing people away and
Yep.
pissing people off.
Yep.
And that's not really doing anything good. Especially the people that are really anti, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, look, see, we were right, you know. And
That's it. That's exactly what it is. We've seen the LGBT acceptance rate go down for the first time in history in the last couple of years, and it's because that's exactly what's going on. Is I've had this conversation with other people like, I'm tired of the LGBT community. I'm like, me too. You know, like it's not the LGBT, but this queer movement is just it's making me not like them.
hijacked. It's just like
Exactly.
the feminine movement. It was hijacked, and you know, with racism, that was hijacked, and we even have a lot of Black folks saying, "How did the gay people get, you know, this much more further than us, you know, in our movement for equality? How did this happen?"
Yeah.
They feel
Yeah.
screwed.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, like I said, 2015 was like the pinnacle. That was when gay people basically got, you could say, all the same rights as everybody else because gay marriage was legalized. As the libertarian in me, I don't think government should be involved in marriage, but if you're going to be equal, then I guess that's
That's
something that makes you equal, you know? So that was like the pinnacle of LGBT acceptance. And then there was nothing to fight for. And then 2016 was the first bathroom bill in North Carolina. It was Charlotte, North Carolina, tried to forcing businesses to allow anybody who self ID'd as trans in the women's restroom. And then North Carolina went the complete opposite direction and banned anybody who identified as trans in the women's bathroom. And that's what created the spiral that we see now.
and what is your biggest concern with that? I know we were going to end, but I have so many more questions now because you went into the whole like aspect of why it's dangerous, and I think that you should kind of touch on that because I mean I've touched on it a million times with people that I know, but I want to hear it from you. Like, what do you think is going to happen to, like, how do you think these kids are going to get affected psychologically, like in the future? Are they going to be productive adults? Or are they going to just be constantly emotional about things that don't even concern them. Like, just to have an opinion, oh, like you can't even shop on the internet anymore without being reminded about Ukraine and every corporation that supports the next thing,
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the effects of all this now. The generation that was always given a trophy, right? Everybody's a winner. Now pushing for socialism, but we're also seeing the effects because of just the mental health aspect of it, of constantly being inundated with doom and gloom or fighting and all this stuff is really affecting people. I mean, probably I don't remember what the stats are, but we know that we have almost, most of the population are on SSRIs of some sort or another because of mental health issues. And so, yeah, all of this is building, and we're basically, these kids are being taught that they're perpetually a victim. And that's even what CRT taught, was you're perpetually a victim and you can't get out of your victim status. So when you feel this victim status and then you get points for being a victim, and then that gives you a voice, it's like, it's going to continue, but then it continues to build these mental health issues and these like anxiety and depression, and the feeling that you're never going to belong because so many people hate you. I think if you think that so many people hate you, I think that that's a pretty sad life to live. And I mean, I think that's the culture that's been pushed, is this. And then in the trans movement, I think I've been kicked out of 2 Reddit groups for saying trenders exist, and when the detransition rate skyrockets, it's going to hurt actual trans people.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that, so then they blocked me from the channel. And but it's true. I think we're at some point, the trend's going to change. Like I said, we've seen it. Trend's going to change, and so once it does, what happens when all these people go to detransition and they regret, like the decisions that we said earlier, that now they can't have kids, now they've deformed their bodies, now they've done all this stuff because they thought it was what was right at the time, when they didn't, and nobody gave them pushback on it.
Right. And it's gonna be like a lot of suicides. That's what I'm thinking. People are really gonna hurt themselves.
Well,
Yeah.
that goes along with everything, and we see a lot of this stuff jump during COVID, and so, but that's I hate to put on my conspiracy theory hat, but where's my tinfoil hat, right? I think a lot of it was by design, in order to push the Great Reset. You need to have people that are so inundated with themselves and their own problems and being, just pushed down at their lowest points before you can implement this. We are going to bring it the build back better. We're going to build it back better. We're going to build you up, and we're going to give you everything. We are going to fix your depression. We're going to fix everything that you're feeling right now, and we are the answer. And that's what they had to do to be able to build it back up in that way. So when you hear build back better, it is a system, and that's what we're seeing with the economy. The economy is going down by design so that they can build it back up into their image that they want it to be. Tinfoil hat off.
You're so on the money, because as me, I came from a Soviet Union country that collapsed, and they couldn't build back better for about 30 years. It was horrible. And that's exactly why I'm here, and why I'm a huge patriot, is because, well, clearly communism didn't work out, and neither did, social, call it whatever you want. Because, people where I come from probably don't even believe they lived in communism. Like, I'm not kidding. And they're brainwashed in their own way over in other countries. But what we have right now is deliberate messing with our rights and our freedoms, like our property, things that we own, our jobs, our health. Like it's on a full scale. It's a full scale attack on humanity, and the sooner that you realize it, the better. And also, I created my podcast around the same time you did, so I think we were both called to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on. I hope you come back again.
Absolutely. Anytime. Let me know. It was great. I loved it.
It was a pleasure. And you can find Sarah online and reach out to her because she loves to talk about this and she wants to inspire others as well. And make sure that you're not a victim, just like me in my mission. And I guess that's all. And thank you so much for listening. And I know I haven't been on in a long time, so I'm so sorry, but I'm back. And thank you, Sarah, for kind of inspiring me to find my voice again, because it is hard to do what we do, because it does take a lot of emotions and strength to just come on and speak your truth and speak out against things that are wrong. So I hope that we do inspire somebody else to do the same.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. How do I do this?